Hello and welcome to a series here on the Burgundy appellations. This is a very in-depth look at key appellations across France's most complex appellation structure ever. With 84 appellations, we're going to go through them all in this series, giving you great information and detail. Here we are looking at the village of Irancy. And Irancy is a really wonderful area, often forgotten. So I wanted to kick off with this so you have good knowledge of this fascinating appellation. If you have any comments or questions, it will be always lovely to hear from you. Please do pop it in the comments section below. Make sure you click like and subscribe. Okay, Irancy is what we're looking at next. There's a lovely picture of some vineyards, but let's go through what it means to be this appellation. So Irancy in the Grand Terroir region stands on the right bank of the Yon River. So you'll see there in blue on your map, of course, is the Yon River. And to the right bank of this, or rather the kind of northern side of it, you'll find the vineyards. So in yellow are the vineyards. This is 15 kilometers south of Auxerre and southwest of Chablis. Now, this is typical of the wine-growing villages of the district. You have a beautiful, majestic church. You'll see that in the picture on the top right, as well as the house where G. Soufflot, architect for the Paris Pantheon, was born. You have lovely little quaint winemakers' houses, making a fitting setting for red wine production with a long reputation of quality. It was raised to the status of an appellation village in 1999, and that includes the village there in the centre of Irancy, but also Vincelot, which lies on the western side on the Yon River, and then the very small hamlet of Crevant sitting to the south. So those three can produce Irancy wine. The area of production here is just 191 hectares, so very small in the vinous drop of both Bourgogne and also France. Okay, let's have a look at our Google Earth video. There's France. We'll identify Bourgogne, which is Burgundy. And then we'll focus on the place in the north, which is the Grand Terroir, which is going to be highlighted in red, I believe. Within the Grand Terroir is Irancy AOC, a small AOC of 191 hectares on the right bank of the Yon. There you'll see the Yon River running there just to its southerly section. This is the location of Pinot Noir and the rustic César. That is Irancy village there. So the AOC of Irancy can use three villages. The village of the same name, Crevant, that you see just here, and then also Vincelot as your final one right on the Yon. And then we had a little bit of a focus on some of the key sites, key crus of Irancy. Here you'll see just north of Irancy itself is Les Mazelots, which is a fantastic, larger south-facing slope there, identified in red. Next is Vaupisio, which is next door to Palotte, which are our final two in the southern part of the appellation of Irancy. So here you'll see on a nice steep slope, there is Vaupisio, identified in green with varying aspects. And then just along from that to the right, the most famous, which is Palotte, arguably identified as the top cru of Irancy, facing south on some excellent exposed sites, as you'll see just there. Now, most of the vineyards here are south-facing, as you know, about 130 to 250 meters altitude. So not the highest, but with some good exposure. Regulations of Irancy. Let's have a look at this. So, the appellation village of the Auxerrois wine growing region within the Yon department, on the label, the name of the climat from which the wine comes may appear immediately beneath the word Irancy that you see just here. So, this label we're showing you is a generic Irancy label. So, it says the name of the village, or it can come from any of the vineyards that were featured on the previous map. Now, you can't have the climat, so if there was a specific climat name, more than half of the size of the village. It will normally be immediately below the name of Irancy as well. So we mentioned Irancy, Cravant, and Vincelot are our villages that we find. What about the geology and topography? So we have hill slopes forming a bowl surrounding the beginnings of a plateau below which runs that Yon River. The slopes are, for the most part, composed of Kimeridian marls with a bit of a mixture of brown limestone soils. And here we will find Pinot Noir flourishing at altitudes at about 130 to 250 meters. Exposures vary, but because a lot of it goes down to the Yon, which sits below towards the south, we'll have a fair bit of southerly and southwesterly facing vineyards. The vineyard picture there shows the Simonette-Fèvre vineyards. I want to give you some good information here about key climats to look for on the label. So you'll notice in the middle of your map is the village of Irancy, the major village here. Located immediately to the north and the west, overlooking the village of Irancy, is Le Mazzolot, which is your large climat. Now, none of these can carry Premier Cru or Grand Cru, so these are single individual plots that we find, or named sites, climats. Towards the south, we have two right on the Yon, so slightly warmer, as we have the Yon effect, but also you've got the warmth that is found from the forest towards the southern section. You have Valpeccio and also the very famous Palotte, quite widely accepted as the most famous of the climat. So that's the one to look for in the area. Now, the grape varieties in play. So it is reds only here. So Pinot Noir, but also César, which I've put on the right-hand side, a maximum of 10%. There are only some sort of 5 hectares of César in the Irancy appellation, and it's said to be brought here by the Roman legions. Of course, the name would suggest that. It's a vigorous variety which produces fairly large bunches of rounded, sort of blackberry size grapes, as you'll see there. On its own, it yields highly coloured wines with red fruited aromas and rich tannins, but these are rare, though you will find some. I'll talk about that very soon. So typically, it's Pinot Noir completely or Pinot Noir dominated. That 10% of César may give a bit more colour, a bit more richness of tannins, or maybe a bit more of rusticity of tannins. Now, you will find typically wines with red fruit, black currant, morello, cherry, raspberry, sometimes floral, licorice, and pepper notes if César is included. On the palate, you'll find good tannic structure. If it's just Pinot, they'll be softer. César will give a more slightly grippier, rustic expression. And the acidity here is certainly very much what balances any form of tannic structure or rustic note from César. The wines can easily age, typically 3 to 5 years, some up to 10 years old as well. What would we match Irancy? So the reds we know are solid, can be a little bit grippy, but can be charming. And it cries out really for dishes with strong, meaty, carnal flavours. Spare ribs and other barbecued meats, like you see here, will find a very enthusiastic partner because it combines with those rustic tannins, soften them a little bit, and then promotes a real sort of almost irony, rich, fruity character in the wine. Casseroles, cassoulet, specifically poulet de cassoulet will work very well. But also cold cuts, pâtés will work very nicely, terrines. Also, you will find lots of saucisson and even cheeses will work here. Look out for things like camembert, brie de meaux, Cantal, Chaos, Délice de Bourgogne. And I like the slightly more structured ones with Époisses or Langres. Typically, you'd serve the wines at 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, with the more structured ones being towards the higher temperatures. So, what do we find here? So, you've got quite a few good producers in play, and I'm going to get my notes up here because I've got quite a few notes. I always take notes on my phone. And you'll see that I've listed 5 key producers here for you from left to right. So, on the left hand side, you find Gabin and Felix Richaud as a key producer. Very good indeed. Hold on a second. Here we go. Yes, I've got my notes just here. I really like these guys. They're more on the slightly sort of natural, brighter side. I found a lot of lovely red fruit in their wines. Wild plum, for example, was quite lovely. And then when you get to their aged styles, there is a bit more of a kind of a smoky, rustic edge to them. Very lovely indeed. Certainly look out for their Le Caille and also the Vaupostière as well, which we talked about as a key climat. But their Pelote is fantastic. It's 90% Pinot Noir, 10% with César, with 15% new oak and 3 years aging in total. Great concentration, quite a lot. And I was trying the 2018, a lot of proud character there. And I found it actually needed a little bit more time to come through. And that was tasted in 2024. So 6 years old. I think that's got a long, long future ahead of it, that style. Next up is Benoit Quintin. It's the second from the left. What I like about Benoit Quintin is that the standard Irancy from them are very bright, slightly earthy, but pure and gentle, with a lot of bright red fruit character. So do look out for those. In the middle, with the black label, is the David Reynaud. David Reynaud, quite well known in the area, some wonderful labels as well. The David Reynaud sources from around 150 parcels and also has a lot of access to César, with also quite a lot of single varietal César being made too. So the one is the black label you see there, which is the Vaupostière Climat, which I found was a little bit more natural, bright, alive, juicy, and rustic. But look out for the other styles produced there, like the Eau Champreux, which was a bit more herbal, brambly, dried, sort of herbal characteristic. That's fascinating. And then also the César wines. I was lucky enough to try single varietals called the Grume de César, and I tried a 2012, 15, and 18. Lovely character, good weight, very earthy, very rustic styles. And do look out. The Les Mazelot as well is quite interesting. Then the second from the right is the Maison de la Chapelle. I found these wines really charming. a little bit more sort of smooth and rounded, more polished in their approach, but very lovely. I would say they're more kind of slightly more modern expressions, more complete. So less rustic, less natural, but well looking out for. And then on the far right hand side is your final expression, which I believe is from, yes, this is from Domaine Verret. Domaine Verret. Some excellent production. Very bright, very red fruited, lots of violet in these styles. And the Palotte is exceptionally important from those guys, the 2018 featured there on the right hand side. So I hope that's given you some ideas of some great Irancy to look out for. Do you have any recommends? What do you like? What's available in your market? What's exciting? Do you like the village? Do you think they are good alternative, affordable expressions of Pinot Noir with that added twist of excitement of César? Please do get in touch and comment on this video below. And come and see me when you're in the UK for a class, glass or bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Goodbye.